All right, well, let's get started here. We're welcoming tonight Alistair CAITHNESS. Did I get it right this time? CAITHNESS. And he is going to be talking to us about tokenization as it relates to the kind of infrastructure needed to leverage tokenization for energy exchange and the like. You know, you've got a lot of great projects going on in this space. Alistair, I certainly couldn't do it any justice to get going with it. So if you want to kind of reintroduce yourself to our audience again. And I also want to say that we're joined here with Richard and, of course, our tokenization, Titan of Tokenization, Eric Spence here. So here we are again. Welcome, everybody. Oh, is somebody from China? Yes, welcome. Welcome. Awesome. All right. Well, you got a huge platform here, Alistair. Take it away.
Okay, so, well, thanks so much again then, Dr. Keisha, Richard, Eric. Great to see everybody. So my background is that I'm CEO of a company called Zion Energy. So essentially, that's just 5 years. We set the company up 5 years ago. So it's in February 2016 we started. Initially, we were set up as an oil and gas company looking to be a startup into the space. We sort of went through rounds of Reg A. We acquired different interest holdings in oil and gas projects across America. You know, right now we've actually got interest in over 50 projects since we've started. So really that's how we sort of set up and developed the company. As we're sort of going through the process, what actually started to happen was we got involved in the blockchain and tokenization. So really, if you start to think about the blockchain and tokenization and how our model works for the oil and gas market space, my phone's going off. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. We're live, folks.
Sorry about that. It was just really annoying me. It's actually the school. It's the principal sending through a message saying school's closed for another week.
Okay. Wow.
You're homeschooling again, everybody. You know, he sends it every week, so that was it. But so back to what we were doing. So really, if you think about what our model was, it's really, if you're thinking about tokenizing oil and gas. So the first thing is when I say to people I'm tokenizing energy, we're not actually tokenizing the product itself. It's actually the financial structure. So what we're involved in is capital structures. So if people start to think about the blockchain, now people are hearing about the word blockchain more and more and more. It's sort of got its roots from Bitcoin. So the technologies come from Bitcoin and Bitcoin operates on the blockchain. But for what we're doing is we're operating on a blockchain that's run on Ethereum. Now, people are starting to hear the word Ethereum a lot more because this is a second cryptocurrency as much that's actually come out there and it just passed $1,500. But unlike something like Bitcoin, there's not a finite amount of it. So anytime we're tokenizing any project, it's actually on the Ethereum blockchain. So that's the first thing people need to understand. So if you're thinking about the oil and gas market space and what we're doing, you know, realistically, you're thinking that what's the problem you're trying to solve? Right. You know, that's the first thing. This is what the blockchain is going to do. So for most people out there, they're thinking, why is this technology going to change so many things? But really what it's going to do is it's going to change the capital structures of assets. That's what it's about to do. So we call this asset-backed tokenization. So right now, if you were going to invest in an oil project traditionally in America, you would put in, say, $50,000. It would give you 1 to 2% of the project. As this project moves into production, every quarter, you would be getting a check back for maybe 20 years based on how much oil produced, what was the oil price of that day, and what percentage of the project you owned. And that's really how the oil and gas market space has been working for the last 100 years. And essentially, that's how a lot of the energy industry works out with oil and gas. This is the structures of it. Mm-hmm. The beauty about the blockchain is, the problem is when you own 1% of an oil project is, if you ever wanted to sell this asset, it's very hard to sell. What's the value of it? And then you need to find a buyer in the world who wants to do it. By us tokenizing the project, so if you think now, rather than your 1 to 2% of the project, you might own 50,000 Zion coins. Now, these 50,000 Zion coins is your percentage of the project, and it's essentially what we're able to do is it'll still provide you distributions as it produces oil if you own this energy token or energy project. But the difference now is if you want to actually sell your interest under tokenization, what you're able to do is take the asset, it's got a certain value, it's going to go to an ATS, which is called an alternative trading system, but essentially it's an exchange for tokens. And it allows the person who's actually acquired the asset this ability to sell it. So if you think of, well, that doesn't sound that, it doesn't sound like the Matrix. You know what I mean? So when people think, oh, tokenization, is this the Matrix? But it's not the Matrix at all. Basically, what it is this is what's actually happening. But if you start to think more and more about what's actually happening, you're about to change the financial structures. So up until now, if you think of big commercial assets, companies are buying into them and owning percentages. And to sell this interest is very difficult. Under tokenization, you've created a model whereby once you can take these tokens and go on a two-way exchange, the alternative trading system, therefore, you're not locked into the life cycle of the project that could be 20 years. They're already tokenizing real estate projects. So they're not really tokenizing your house. They're tokenizing, say, big real estate projects in terms of if you were wanting to buy a sort of, an investment into, say, a mall. A mall would be a good investment because they're creating a mall. There's lots of different people in there. People own rent. If this was tokenized, as people are paying rent into this mall across all the different stores, you would get a percentage of the rent that comes in. If you think about the same model with energy, it's the same thing. All that is rather than getting paid rent is as this energy or area of land is either created for oil, wind, solar, nuclear, as it starts to generate energy and that money comes back into the company, depending on how many tokens you own, you'll get distributed a certain percentage back to you. So it provides you distributions. So if you start to think about what's happening is all we're doing is not changing the whole business, we're just changing the capital structures of the energy projects themselves. But when people start to think about that, essentially you're changing the capital structures of all assets in the world, and that's what's so big about tokenization, because once it goes into mainstream and everything goes into tokenization, essentially from a financial perspective, the capital structures of all projects going forward are going to move to this model because it increases the liquidity where the liquidity is currently locked into the life cycle of the project. And that's essentially what's happening.
And, for the everyday person too, help us understand the benefit of that once getting all those structures in place, how that works for the everyday person.
So you think of everyday person, right up until now, there's very limited opportunity for the everyday person to invest in energy projects.
Okay.
So you think of oil and gas, it's unless you're in the oil and gas sphere and you've got enough money to be able to invest into multiple projects, so one hits a home run, becomes a winner, the barriers of entry are high. A lot of oil projects these are domestic US oil projects, they do like a minimum of $50,000 to come in. So unless someone's got $50,000 to invest in an oil project, then essentially they're not going to come in. And if they're not working from that industry, and even if they're in the industry, but if they're not used to land drilling in America, it's very difficult for them to break into this market segment. So really what tokenization does is it fractionalizes the ownership. They call it democratization of ownership. So what it's doing is it's democratizing the ownership of these energy projects where your man in the street might be able to come in at $500. And with his $500, he owns tokens. So it's not cryptocurrency. That's the big difference people need to understand. This thing's securities. It's registered securities. It's like digital securities, different from cryptocurrency. It goes through an SEC transfer agent. It's held there. If you lose your wallet, you don't lose your investment because the transfer agent knows how many you've got. And then as it starts to produce energy, you start getting distributions back. So really what it's going to allow to do is it's going to allow the everyday man this opportunity. It's still going to be barriers to entry like anything. But suddenly if the minimum investment's $1,000 and you can have tokens and own these tokens, and when they're on an ATS exchange, it means rather than being stuck into the life cycle of the project, you can actually sell these tokens for cash again. And that's really one of the things that's about to happen with tokenization, is it's going to open this ability for the man in the street to actually own assets that provide them distributions. And up until now, really just the governments and the big corporations can do that. And
which areas do you think that this will kind of, which markets or which industries do you think that this will basically capture first? Is it, you're talking about oil and gas, or do you think it's mainly oil and gas first, or real estate, or?
Real estate's getting done first. So there's more and more real estate projects that are going to do this, you know, and I just think it's just starting to go into all energy sectors. So, and then people are using the blockchain. So tokenization is just one aspect of the blockchain. So if you think of people running projects on the blockchain, so people have to understand that essentially, if you think about databases, you know, the blockchain is like a big database. So if a company set up a private blockchain to run a project on, then essentially they could have set up a permission blockchain and have 5 or 6 companies accessing this central database where the information is basically transparent. Everybody is in there, because anyone who hashes something on this blockchain, they can't actually delete it. You know, so people are using it from that perspective as well. And like, I think 70% of the world's shipping is now tracked on the blockchain. So people don't even realize that there's so many things coming in with the blockchain. I'm just working on this sector of tokenization and tokenizing energy assets. And coming back to your question for that, Percy, it's really real estate's the first one that's starting to break more and more barriers. But I think the energy sector's, you know, relevant to it. I just think all sectors of industry will start to move into it.
Hey, Alastair, I got a question. Listen, energy is as old as time itself. Okay. When you then, because you know, obviously there are people there who have been in energy from the very beginning, and it's, you know, a lot of legacy players there. When you talk to them about what you're looking to do, whether you're talking to your other partners and that sort of thing, what kind of response do you have? Do they immediately get it? Or are they kind of like, hey, Alistair, I'm still not sure? Like, what is your response usually to them?
They're already involved. So in the big energy companies are already involved in the blockchain. They're looking to do projects and that type of information. When I start talking about creating these coins and tokens and stuff, they like the idea of it, but it's too far out for them right now, you know? But it's not like they don't understand it. You know what I mean? So the guys that you work for, Shell and, you know, BP, ExxonMobil, the people they've got involved in the blockchain that they're investing in, you know, they're so smart anyway. You know what I mean? So these guys are in the space understanding it. It's just what we are doing is more on the cutting edge. And I think we need to show proof of concept more for these guys to buy in, to start using it. I think, see, what we've done is we've essentially developed a platform where we can tokenize any energy assets on behalf of other companies. So what we're able to do is we can create your own token for you. Now, when I was in a platform with Saudi Aramco, Shell, Chevron about 2 years ago. And when I first started speaking to them, there's a guy, Karn Sood, that's key guy with Shell's blockchain guy. And if you meet this guy, he's not like an oil guy. He's like a sort of Silicon Valley super geek guy. You know what I mean? So when you first meet him, you just like, this guy, he works for Shell. You know, it looks like he's, you know, it doesn't look, but they're hiring these guys now. These guys are super smart. It's like the big energy companies are hiring the smartest guys. So they're coming in working for these guys. And he said, look, so we're never going to just use your coin for the whole industry. That's not going to happen. Right. But then, you know, once I talked about the process, but he likes the idea and understands what I'm doing. And then when I said, well, what I can do is if Shell had an energy project that they were looking to tokenize and sell off, and I can make a Shell token for these guys that they can use and belongs to them, nothing else, it runs in Ethereum. I'm essentially just a service provider doing that. Yet you're on to something now, because we like the idea that you can build us something that we can use and brand ourselves. So the models moved closer to what they want, because one underlying coin or token for the oil industry in terms of tokenization, you know, I can't do that because I don't produce all the energy. You know, if all the big operators at one point decided we'll all chip in together, call ourselves whatever the token is, and then we all own it and we'll run this stuff on it, you know, that's obviously going to have a lot more success. So what you might find is there's a lot of talk from places like in Russia that they'll do their own one for Gazprom, So Gazprom have got, that's a big gas company that produce all the gas, but that gas is sold all over Europe. They're already looking at creating their own sort of coin that they were looking to, like, obviously get paid, and settle in their own type of coin. And if they're producing so much gas, they would be able to do it. Where I'm just basically right down at the cutting edge and starting to do it. So really, when we started to monitor it, so, 2 weeks ago, so I created this sort of Zion Energy tokenized fund. So rather than people thinking I'm acquiring from the top down and driving it down, when you start to talk about the development of Zion Coin, what we're really doing is we're acquiring the dust at the bottom and trying to buy everything from the bottom up. So we acquired an interest into 42 projects through Zion Coin. So it was a cash and Zion Coin deal. Now, we bought fractional interest. This is not even 1%. This is like 0.0013246% of this oil well, 0.00136% of this oil well. And these are mature wells that are just pumping up and down. But what's amazing about it is we acquired a percentage of the current production in Zion Coin. So now we'll be getting, every month, we'll be getting a check that comes in based on how much oil is produced and what's actually been developed from there. And we've been acquiring mineral rights, etc. So what we've done is to create Zion Energy into like a tokenized fund. So that's what we've started to do. And then I envisage us being in amongst thousands of projects by the end of the year. So my target is I want to have an interest in 1,000 producing oil wells, tiny fractional interest. Like when people see Bitcoin stuff and these energy, and I'm buying up the dust that's coming in at the end of doing this. And really, it shows proof of concept. Listen, it works from this. Now I've got this ability to make you a token to do your thing. So you can see it's actually working. And then it stops the model failing because I need to get adoption from the major operators because it's already happening at this tiny percentage. And I was once told by this Gary Tusi, who does our stuff in the basin. He's been a oil producer for like 50 years, and he's helped me a lot, made me an operator to work through. And he always told me, like, there's money in the dust, if you buy the dust, it's there forever. There's money in doing that. So that's really how we've started to work it. And it's just to change the mindset and it stops doing it, So we're looking to do more and more acquisitions there in terms of acquiring this. So when people buy Zion Coin, that's what we're looking to acquire. And, that's really what we've done with oil and gas. And I see us creating this tokenized fund, but other companies out there, if they want to create their own tokenized fund, we can create the capital structures and token for you in order for you to be able to do it. And what Zion Coin is, we'll take a fractional interest of every deal based on how big the deal is. If it's a big company, we might get very little, like a tiny transactional fee. If it's a smaller company, we might get a higher percentage and charge them less money to make the token. So we'll just be flexible with what everyone's in there. So if people runs a small oil company and they're trying to capitalize or raise money to basically fund this project, we would take a bigger percentage, whereby if Karen Sood from Shell said, can you make me a token for that? We're giving you 0%, but we'll write you a big check. Will you do it? Oh, yeah. I'm not going to not do it, because then I'm working with the big operators to do these things, Right. So it's like, so that's the model of where we're at right now.
So I'm sorry. Am I hearing tokenization as a service going on with you guys?
Just energy tokenization.
Energy in particular. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like I would look to do all energy. We could go into everything, but it's energy what we've built our platform to create tokens for other people. And then we are partnering with a company that is an exchange and is a SEC broker dealer, and they are a transfer agent. So everything we're doing will be SEC regulated. So once the system, and we're looking for this to be live within a month. We've been working on it for like 2 years. And then once the energy tokens platform is available, you'll be going through their transfer agent. It'll be held there. You'll have an Ethereum wallet, which is like a MetaMask wallet for people out there that might know the brand name. But really, that'll be plugged into our system. But the beauty of what we do is if you lose your wallet, it doesn't actually matter. Because what happens is the transfer agent knows how many tokens you've got in whatever project. They would just burn those tokens that you've got, and then you'd open a new wallet and reissue it. Because in order to buy the tokens, you've had to go through KYCs, and the same way you have to invest in a company, and then or accredited investor checks if it's certain companies. So really, that capability is there. So I think that's why this way of tokenization, where it's not anonymous and it's within government control is going to get mass adoption, because people are going to realize, because people's biggest fear is, you know, if I bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin and I lost my wallet key, like some guy you see in the news, you know, and suddenly like, you know, it's just that you can't really get your token stolen, because really all it is just a digital security. It's essentially a security with this new technology.
Yeah, I think the security on this is brilliant. I think it's a great idea to have it set up, especially with you instituting a system that you have where other companies can actually tokenize under Zion Coin. Is that correct?
Yeah, they would create their own token. So they would brand their own token. They would create it all up. We would basically go through the process and help them to create the token, and then the token would be theirs. And then essentially we are like the platform. It's like having a launch pad
like Polkadot or TrustSwap, Paid Network. That they have the model, and then they can launch actually tokens off of their launch pad. That's brilliant. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and we'll stick to the core business of energy, which is what we know, you know. So it's like, I wouldn't go and just start tokenizing real estate, because there's guys that are in the real estate business 30 years that know the business better than me. So why would I be more successful at doing something he knows, you know? And it doesn't mean other people won't. And, you know, once it starts to work, the barriers to entry in what we're doing won't stop other people coming to copy what we're doing. It's just like, we're going to be first to market, you know?
Right.
So that's the best thing of doing. But I think, you know, I posted it in the group earlier, was, you know, yesterday 2 days ago, we acquired a 35-year renewable energy lease in Wyoming. So obviously with administration change and everybody looking at green energy, we've obviously started to look at, and we actually pivoted the company because of the COVID lockdown. So originally we set it up that we were all going to just be focused on oil and gas. But then once COVID started, and then the oil price went to minus 37 and everything got shut in, and it just, you know, that was the middle of the lockdown really. And, you know, March, April, May, we couldn't go forward with just this model of oil and gas. So that's why we changed it to cover all energy sources, reconfigured the plan. And then we obviously started looking at renewable energy. Now, the beauty of renewable energy is, in a way, it's even more difficult to invest in renewable energy right now. You know, you can invest in a company that develops renewable energy products like Tesla. You know, it's like Tesla is the number one renewable energy company in the world, say. So you're investing them and you invest in a product. But for you to invest in the renewable energy source itself, you can't actually do it, because it's like, who owns part of a wind farm or a big solar farm? You know, it's like pension funds and governments that own it. So what we're able to do with this is we're able to essentially set up its own token for the wind farm or the solar farm. And then obviously the operators will come in that we'll create the tokens for. They'll still own the percentage of the token, but a certain percentage of these tokens will be set up for retail investment. So what it'll do is it'll allow the man in the street this ability to buy into the renewable energy source itself. So once that wind farm and solar farm essentially starts producing electricity, and that goes back to the grid, depends on how it's structured. Every quarter, they'll start getting a check, or they'll get paid in whatever the payment structure is, but based on the electricity that's being created from renewable energy.
And if I, just to ask a little bit more detail on that, if I were man on the street, I had $1,000 and I am interested in getting access to just kind of renewable energy investments like you're talking about. And I'm interested really in kind of a dividend play.
So this is what it is. It's called distributions, but it's a dividend play based on the energy it produces.
Now, is that per project? Like you just got access to a certain, wind farm. Is it that I'm buying in for that particular project, or is it the collection of projects that you have going on and you just kind of take a dividend is basically calculated from across all of the projects that you have going on with your particular company?
It'll just be depending how each company sets it up. So if it was a big wind farm and they wanted to do, you know, wind project 1, wind project 2, wind project 3, that would be up to them. If someone wanted to do a similar type fund whereby they wanted to do multiple projects and keep putting in, what that would do would increase the valuation of the token itself.
Okay.
So it's really just depends on how each person does this. So if you think about what we acquired through Zion Coin in Wyoming, we've acquired a 35-year lease, renewable energy lease for the next 35 years on a 206-acre piece of land in Wyoming with the option for this other 10,000 acres. Now, we've got the ability, so we'll essentially create the token. So we're getting people to come in who are operators to essentially assess the viability of actually setting a wind farm up there. But there's a wind farm being built up 10 miles down the road. So we've acquired the land with the knowledge that they're already putting wind turbines up very close to the land that we've got. And ideally, what we want to do is essentially, it's not like we're going in the middle of nowhere to build a wind farm. The infrastructure is already there. So what we'll look to do is to basically create the wind farm and plug it straight into the current wind farm to provide additional energy from that, you know, or into that infrastructure.
So
that'll be the cost.
So if I had $1,000 to put into Zion Coin, then, you know, and you set up your wind farm, and however you set up your distribution, maybe I'd get a dividend of $20 a quarter for or something like that for as a distribution.
So what we'll probably end up doing is we'll end up creating this into its own wind token with whoever the operator is that does it. And then Zion Coin will end up owning a percentage of this wind token. So we might want to own 6% of the wind token. So every single project that we bring there, we're no longer going to be the operator itself. We'll basically be the company that helps sort of try and create the token, create the opportunity. Our investment will be to own a percentage of this. And then whatever the percentage would come back to Zion Coin, it would come back that way, you see. Okay. So what Zion Coin is only a percentage of each one, whereby if a wind energy operator wants to build the token themselves, we would just, because we are the ones that lease the land and working with the landowner to do it, we'd own a percentage, but then they would obviously own a percentage of that as well.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the crypto industry like to swap coins. Now, under the Zion token, if you have many projects, maybe you got a wind token that is launched off the Zion, or a solar token. Do they have the ability to swap?
So the way we'll have it set up is that you'll be able to invest through Bitcoin, Ethereum, US dollars, or euros, and you'll be able to sell into those four currencies. So you'll be able to buy in and sell out, but really there'll be a transactional time each time. Because it's a sort of ATS, that's the way the transactions will come, you know?
So with the transaction, say for instance, you had under Zion Coin, correct me if I'm wrong, you've created maybe a wind coin, a company they're doing a wind farm, and then another company came along and said, hey, I want to do a token of the Zion Coin, and I want to do solar. But then the person that has solar maybe wants to swap some of their solar coins for some wind coin to be more diversified. Would they be able to do that?
I think the way it's structured is you would have to sell and buy the new ones. You see what I mean?
Got it.
Yeah.
So they have to sell out either into Ethereum or Bitcoin and then buy.
Or US dollars and euros. So we've got it set. We're going to have it set up that any of these tokens, you'll be able to invest directly with Bitcoin. And if you sell those tokens, you'll be able to sell and get paid in Bitcoin, Ethereum, euros, or US dollars. So it's going to be those four currencies that we're doing with, you know. So it'll be, but there's someone we've been speaking to that's got a gold mine and is interested in making a gold mine token. And then what's interesting about what they're trying to do is they want to actually get people to invest in the gold mine through Bitcoin. And as they produce gold, they'll give you the option to get paid in your distributions in Bitcoin or actual gold. You know, so every 6 months they can send you through FedEx Gold, which is pretty crazy to think you can actually invest in a gold mine in Bitcoin and get your distributions in Bitcoin or in actual gold itself and sell to come out. But this is what's going to start to happen. People are going to be able to start to see how this thing is going to change, you know?
Yeah, Alistair, by the way, Peter Schiff's head just exploded when he heard
you. Yeah. Hey, we have two questions in the room. First, one question was, does ALASTAIR have job or contractor opportunities available, or say internship possibilities available?
We've actually got one of our interns right now is Ethan, and he's a specialist in helping write a lot of our white papers, financial papers. So he's University of Florida. So he actually headed up the paper that we wrote and we published through Springer. And it was our financial white paper. So it's actually starting, and it was actually in conjunction with Ethan's from University of Florida, but it was University of Michigan and Columbia University, and a number of key professors that helped write about our first paper, the process of what we've actually done. So everything I've talking about, we've written a white paper. It costs $39.95, but if you leave your name, I'll send it for free. So I don't get any of that money, by the way. It's sold on some website. But they wrote about what we've actually done in terms of the structure of what it is, and they're working on a second white paper with us to talk more about the platform in terms of this ability to create tokens on behalf of other people. Because what I think we've created here, if this wind farm works, is it'll speed up the transition in energy, because what we've done is we're creating this new financial structure to essentially fund renewable energy projects, And then in addition to that, people might be looking for places to invest. And if you've got an opportunity to invest in various solar and wind projects, and then hold on to this project, because the thing about solar and wind is it's quite consistent in terms of the distributions you get. It's because essentially once it's there, so once the capital infrastructure is in place, you've got to repair the stuff. But if you think of a solar farm, they're just cleaning the solar panels. So that'll produce energy for the next 20 years. It's not as much as you would get from an oil project. So this was part of the problem when renewable energy is coming out. When you looked at the big energy companies, they were more reluctant to go into it because they could make so much money from oil and gas because the payoff's so high for their capital investment. But because the cost of everything's involved in developing wind farms and solar farms come down, and suddenly, and the payoff's longer and the technology's got better, suddenly it's becoming more in terms of compatible in prices, And then out with what's happening in green energy, everyone's wanting to push to be green anyway. This is also a key development in it. Ultimately, fossil fuels will eventually die out in the next 50 to 100 years, not because we're running out of oil or coal. It's just because we'll be able to produce renewable energy essentially less than $9 a barrel. And when they produce renewable energy at less than $9 a barrel, which is like the price it costs to produce oil and gas in places like Saudi Arabia, it's a lot more expensive in the US to produce oil than it is there. If you start being able to produce it en masse at less than $9 a barrel, essentially fossil fuels becomes redundant once we've created enough renewable energy. It's just this transition period that's going to take a long time,
Right.
Hey, Alistair, let me ask you, because Wyoming is pretty much the most crypto blockchain friendly state, in the United States. Was that part of your decision when you went and you looked at this wind farm?
Yeah, because Wyoming was key in terms of doing this. So most people who don't live in Wyoming don't realize that you can walk into any BMW garage store, whatever else it is, and you offer to pay them in Bitcoin, they've got to accept it.
Yep.
It's in that state, they've got to accept it if you offer to pay in Bitcoin right now. So most people think, really? Yeah. And they'll have it set up. If someone's coming to buy it to give you Bitcoin, what difference does it make? You've got it, you can change it. So that's how far they're pushing Wyoming in terms of the development of cryptocurrency, tokenization, and it's just like they're providing the cutting edge technology. So because they're obviously key with that, when we looked at this place as well, that's obviously key for the first development. But I think going forward, what we'll do is just get more and more opportunities and people understand it. It's not that far. We're at a tipping point whereby it's like the start of the internet. It's just, we spoke about a year ago, we're a year further on, but a year on, we've come through COVID to a certain extent. the world's gone so upside down anyway, anything's actually possible. And then the one commodity that actually stayed most static through all of lockdown was Bitcoin. And then it's obviously raised a lot since that. And now you've got all the institutions now setting up funds and acquiring Bitcoin. It's like it's never going to disappear. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I agree.
You go to the meeting today? Did you go to Michael Saylor's meeting today?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So it's but yeah, so you just start to think about that, but you start to think again of what we're involved in. It's at the cusp of this tokenization process. So the acquisition we made for this 35-year lease for all the energy that's created above it was in Zion coins. So that in itself shows you what we're doing with Zion coins. It's taking this time to do it, but now we've got a landowner who's essentially going to be our partner for the next 35 years, and we've acquired the rights to produce all the energy on top. Now, obviously, as part of the deal, he'll get 20% of anything we produce, because that's just like an oil and gas deal, but essentially it's flipped over into renewable energy, like a surface lease development. And that's really just that. And to me, that's a groundbreaking mark, because suddenly it's like, someone's prepared to do this for such a long period of time, but it starts the process one stage further. And then, as we start to tokenize more and more assets and provide this opportunity for people to do it. So really, for the adoption to happen, what we'll do is, we want 20, 30, 50 energy producers to now want their own token. And then we set it up. This thing's SEC registered. It's the same way you would invest in any other project. Here's the information. You go through KYCs. The difference now is, you've got this token that you're buying and selling, and you'll be able to buy and sell it on an ATS, alternative trading system, that's the technical terms for it. And it's a two-way exchange.
Got a question. How many acres of land were you able to attain this lease for?
So it's the initial purchase is 206 acres, but there's the option to do a further 10,000 acres.
Wow. Do you have the ability to sublease for those that want to launch their own token under Zion coin?
Yeah, we will work. So we will work with a landowner to do that. So he already knows that if a big energy company wants to come on, we would actually just create the token for the land. We've acquired the lease on it, and then what Zion coin would own as percentage of the tokens. That's the model we actually are looking to do. So as we're going out and speaking to people, we'll bring in an operator, and this will be the way it's structured. And then they might even not want to sell all of the token. They might, we're going to keep it all, and we're going to do this. Right. But what you push for is at least there'll be a percentage of it for retail investment. So the man in the street can actually own part of this wind farm, or the wind token one, or whatever they want to call it. Because to me, that's and then, and if they start acquiring more things and putting the token, and the value goes up, like the asset value goes up. But these tokens they'll increase in value as the company increases in value, but they shouldn't just jump up and down like the cryptocurrencies, basically based on pure demand, because it's really going to be worked against the sort of asset value of it. So what you're looking to do is to create tokens that are more steady in terms of price things, but then what they're doing is they're giving you distributions, or a dividend, a token distribution, every 3 months, 6 months, depending on how much token you own and how much energy they've produced.
It's kind of similar to staking, so to speak. Yeah, you plant your stake in the Zion coin in the 200 odd acres that you have, and keep on collecting a percentage based on the revenue, profits and revenue coming in. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the way we're looking. So in a way, it's amazing to think from a year ago we were just talking about the concept to now we're actually issuing tokens to acquire that, and then that's sort of doing it. And if you think of it, and that's why we changed it like a tokenized energy fund. So I never want to be the operator going forward. I always want to have the non-operated side of things. The bigger I can have for the company, the better. But ideally, any percentage is good, because we're increasing the spread of the sort of the concept to more and more places. So, and we've got, we actually own, one of the acquisitions we made is for mineral rights in a place, Pike County. But when we went to visit it, it was a reconditioned coal mine. So it was funny because Shane, who was my friend from Scotland, was original partner in the business. When we went there, he was like going, what have you bought? Because the color of the grass was like super green everywhere in Indiana, apart from the bit I had was like bright yellow. And I'm thinking, this is like weird. It's like I've been some sort of nuclear power plant spillage and I've bought it. But it was basically a reconditioned land coal mine. So what they did is, but there's oil in the mineral rights. So quite often in Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, where there's oil, there's coal. It's just an early formation of, coal, really, oil. So when we got that, so actually we've got a lot of coal that we own. So when the price went to minus 37 that day, he texted me and goes, at least we've got that coal out in Pike County, because otherwise when all the oil went to minus 37. And I was thinking and then we started going online and researching who's buying a lot of coal right now. And it's like Japan's buying a lot of coal. They closed all their nuclear power plants, So it's when they had that tsunami. So they've become the second biggest import in the world to coal to China. So we are thinking, so a lot of the coal that gets produced in America right now, they're not producing, they're producing it and exporting it. And so much goes over to Japan and China anyway. So we're suddenly like in the middle of lockdown, trying to be positive, right? We've lost all the asset value and the oil's gone down to minus 37. At least we've got this coal, But I'm glad everything's come back to normal. But it's amazing the things you own. So what we'll look to do going forward is to continue to acquire different mineral rights for our tokenized fund and keep building them up. And then obviously look to have different operators who want to come in and move away from us being the operator and leasing the land itself, unless we can get really long-term leases for 10 years plus, whereby then we can bring in the operator and try and put a token to create that. But we'll always want to be the non-operator for this in terms of the interest that we own and have someone else deal with that. And that's really the way. But that allows scalability of our project so much more. Because up until we made the decision to go to that side of things, we were always based on, how much is Zion coin actually worth? What are we going to buy from this? How much is it going to cost for us to do this? Whereby now, because we've created the capabilities to create tokens on behalf of other energy companies, we'll take percentages of these, and Zion coin, it'll just increase as we increase more projects and more companies making tokens.
Good question. So as you scale up, what are the type of individuals you're looking for or that you would need, whether it's somebody that's a coder, writing smart contracts, or a project manager?
It's just really a lot. I think a lot of what we're doing will be like business development. Anybody who comes into blockchain to understand what it is, it's marketing with that, and then how to develop that. Because you need to have a level of sort of knowledge, sophistication of what we're doing, or coming from the energy industry to understand what it is, So it takes time for most people to get up to speed with it, but it's not like complete rocket science. I think a lot of people are right now, the problem with blockchain is because we're using words.
Yeah.
Tokenization.
Jargon. Yeah.
And the jargon. And it's like some guy wrote in one of my internet comments, basically, because I said, look, I'm the top first page of Google for finance infrastructure tokenization for our white paper, which I thought was really impressive. And the guy wrote, you're just the top of Google for words you're making up with your pals. It's like, well, there's some truth in what you're saying, but to a certain extent, I have made up the words, and and it's all these professor guys that are doing this type stuff. But so it's like it's infancy, and there's so many different applications of the blockchain, and like what you guys are doing with the Black Blockchain Consultant and encouraging people to come in. It's like, if you start thinking about smart contracts, it's like, I would say 5 years from now, invoices aren't going to exist. Now, people might think that's absolute garbage. I'm telling you, once the big companies move into this process, and you get paid. So if people think about a smart contract right now, if you do some work or provide goods for someone, you would send in them an invoice and they've got 30 days to pay you. And at the 30-day period, you expect to pay them. But under smart contracts, what happens is you agree everything. So the minute you get your goods delivered on site, the smart contract's executed and you get paid straight away. And that's really what the big operators and guys are looking at the blockchain right now. And they might think, well, why do they want to do that? Because they can remove all the back-end finance division of their company, and they're thinking they could save 7 to 8% of fixed costs. Now, if you're a big operator, you know, I saw the Shell stood there and they turn over like $350 to $400 billion. And they're talking about saving 8% of their fixed costs in the next 10 years through moving to blockchain and smart contracts. Now, massive companies, that's why they're going into this, because they're saving money from that. So if anybody's coming in, everyone's going to start going into this type of smart contract. And it's just that this is going to be the future. And, you know, the way these smart contracts work, it's not like coding on the internet. Yeah, to actually be a coder and develop a smart contract, you need a high level of skill. But to actually start to use the smart contracts, they're making it very user friendly. So a bit like when the internet came along, the only people who were able to get into the beginning were the coders. And it took a long time until they made WordPress and all these websites that we can now knock together a quick WordPress and, you know, the easy ways to do these things. With the blockchain, the reason why the adoption is not going to take 30 years, it's going to come in within a 10-year period is because the ability for people to use it is going to be so much easier than the way the internet had this long runway. You know, and that's what's actually starting to happen. And, you know, I see what you guys are doing, encouraging people to come into it. You know, it's not like you've not missed the boat. The boat's just starting to sail. And it's not like it's just one boat, boat Zion, boat Bitcoin, boat that. The next thing you know, there's going to be thousands of boats going this way. And there's going to be opportunity for everyone starting to go into this. And that's where so much opportunity and jobs are coming from. It's a bit like you know, Biden and all that talk about green energy. We're going to get 1 million or billions of jobs in green energy. But to me, it's like, you know, there are going to be jobs for capital infrastructure to build these things. But once a wind farm's built and a solar farm's built, unlike oil and gas, which is labor intensive, coal's labor intensive. Yeah, it's less labor intensive than it used to be. But the beauty of renewable energy is it's actually not labor intensive at all. These things are meant to spin around for 20 years. The solar farms, you know, the solar panels are just there creating energy. But so you're thinking that within that, they're not going to be all the, you know, but the politicians have got to promise stuff. We're getting rid of all these jobs. You'll get all these new jobs. Wait a minute, I don't know how to do that. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Just like saying that stuff. But if you think about the blockchain, because it's this new technology, you think of how many people have got a job through the internet now. You know, this is like that's why people call it Web 2.0. There's going to be so many jobs involved in the blockchain coming out that this is where the jobs, you know, revolution is going to come across the world. And this is why people want to get involved as quick as possible, because, you know, you can do a 6-8 week course with Harvard on it. You know, Harvard does a 12-week course in the blockchain because it's so new. They can't do a 4-year degree in it.
Right.
You go and do a course that you do any courses to these things. LinkedIn's doing courses now. You know, there's cheaper courses to do that. Your knowledge from there, it's the ability to understand how it works and then apply it to that sector of industry. And that's really what I'm applying it to one sector of the oil and gas industry. And I'm looking at financial structures of energy projects. So it's not like I'm trying to corner the whole market. I'm going after this very, very niche that's just in there. And then if people start to understand it, they start to understand, well, wait a minute, there's all these other ways the blockchain works. How can I apply that to my sector of industry? And how can I be first to market for it? And so I just think there's going to be, you know, millions of opportunities coming through this technology change. And I think that's what's exciting about it, you know?
And you know, ALASTAIR, you actually just really wrapped up well, because that is exactly what we are doing this entire month, is focusing on tokenization for just that purpose, for us to start reimagining the possibilities. You know, you have helped us, and you've actually co-signed what we are always saying, you know, focus on a major. You know, when you already are a professional in a certain industry, you know, the workflows of that industry, there's likely a blockchain application for it, you know, as it relates to any of these transactions where it fits. You know, certainly as you understand the technology, you can make those calls where things fit, where things don't. I wanted to kind of back into your some ideology kind of thinking here. You're libertarian, yes? And how do you envision this new world that we're going into, where everybody has ownership of their personal assets and their identities? What do you feel?
Eric might be a libertarian, you know. I've invited him about 27 times to join the party. I'm still thinking about it. I'm only so you're still thinking about Eric, so it's still a maybe, not a no yet.
That's funny.
Yeah, but you think of it, and what, so if you think of libertarians and a lot of people, so a lot of the Bitcoin guys and the blockchain and cryptocurrency people all feature towards libertarians, So I think if the essence of libertarian is, I want to live my life this way, and you can live your life your way, and as long as you don't bother me and cause harm to society, then I'm happy for you to live your way, and as long as I get to live my way, and it's this sort of two-way. And that's true libertarianism. There's a guy, Larry Sharp, I don't know if you ever come across him. He ran for the Libertarians. I think he's going to probably run for governor and he runs his own chat show, Larry Sharp. He's really good. So to me, he's the essence of the future of libertarians. And Jo Jorgensen, who was the previous leader of the Libertarian Party that ran for the 2020 election, she was a doctor, she was a psychologist, she ran her own business, and really she was a great example, and she was a leader, and she was normal, compared to like Trump and Biden. You were just thinking she's actually normal, but she got no TV time, no air time. They only wheel the libertarians out when, who else in the Libertarian Party? Like the Tiger King, he ran for the third governor. As I get that all the time. But that's really, to me, that's the true essence of what the libertarian is. So you think about how I got involved. So my friend Adam Kokesh, he was running for president. He came up with this concept of Americoin, whereby he wanted to basically get rid of the federal government and create this currency that would be more transparent rather than printing money all the time. But when I came in, I said, well, I don't really know about that. What I can do is take your concept and really develop it in terms of what I understand. And then he was looking for someone to come in with blockchain experience to work with him and develop the project. So that's how I really got brought into the Libertarian Party in the begin with, is just through the blockchain. So we took the project for the Americoin. So really what Americoin is, you take all the assets. So we're talking about tokenization of assets. What we want to do is, getting rid of the federal government. It's a step too far. No one's going to buy into it just based on this cryptocurrency idea. And, and a lot of your sort of, some of these libertarian guys will be against this type thing. But, at the end of the day, it's like everything. It's middle ground, So to me, it was, you get all the government's assets in America. And this is like all the land the government owns and all the energy, all the timber, everything that's produced in that. And then you're thinking in America, all the water rights, all the air rights, you're over potentially 50% of the land in America is still federal land. The original constitution was that the land belongs to the people, not the government or the king. And the king, they were talking about King George of England at the time. So they originally wrote the constitution. This line basically says the people own the land, the government doesn't own it, and definitely King of England doesn't own it. Now get lost, we're on our own now. That was the original one. So up until now, the technology for ownership of the government assets didn't exist. But if you actually tokenize all the government's assets and create a token, there's no reason for the government to own these assets. The government makes its money through taxation. So rather than the government owns the assets, we own the assets through tokenization. And then all the people would just register, have an cryptocurrency MetaMask wallet, and then the government would basically provide you distributions in Americoin. And really what this is, it's like universal basic income. And this is why when I started to talk about this with Adam Kokesh, and no, you can't do UBI, that's a Democrat thing. And I said, well, it's not UBI, it's called tokenized asset distributions. And then he's just like, tokenized asset, I like the sound of this. How does that work? And really what it does, it brings transparency into what the government's doing. But really, if you start to think about it, is every single person who's got a social security would be able to set up one of these wallets, and then they would be given Americoins that would be sent through into their wallet based on what this government asset created on a monthly or quarterly basis. And then we'd all have these Americoin wallets. We would get Americoins, and then we can obviously use that to convert to any other types of currency. The technology already exists to do it. And the model already exists in what we're looking to do. And that's really what we're looking to develop. But if you think of what's happened in America over the last year because of COVID, there's no monetary policy to come at the back of it, because really this is a monetary policy. You know, who was doing monetary policy at COVID was Mike Spence. You know what I mean? He was never going to come up with this idea I've got right now. You know, he wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. So, and then he's rich anyway. So he's like, you know, your rich politicians, they don't want to do this plan. Who benefits the most? The people from inner city areas, the people who don't afford it, can't get an asset. See, the problem is most people don't realize is it's owning an asset that creates wealth in life, you know? And if you've never got an opportunity to own an asset, then what we're saying is, yeah, you're going to get this asset, but it's not like you get these Americans, you sell them. In actual fact, you should keep them. Now, you can basically spend them if you need the money, but if you hold on to them, they'll increase in value. And when you walk past this park, you go and see that mountain, you own a fractional interest of this, and then essentially that's an asset that you own. And by owning an asset for the first time, can change a trajectory to what's happening. Because really, if you think about what's happening right now, the gulf between rich and poor people because of COVID is just going to start going wider and wider and wider and wider. Absolutely. Now, why is it going to go wider? Now, if we start giving people a UBI, which essentially is an allowance, you know, we'll decide, well, we're going to give you $600 a month. You know, that's your allowance. That's what you get. We'll give you $800 a month. The government still controls what they give you. And if they all start, whatever they give you as a UBI, you know, inflation is going to eat into that anyway, and it's going to go down in value in the time. Whereby if you own the asset, what happens is it goes up in value all the time. Like the value of your house goes up in time, like the value of anything, it goes up in time because you own the asset itself. And that's the model that we've been developing. And I've had different governments contact me, speak to me about this now as well, about developing their own version of this. And I just think it's this pivot point whereby what I'm doing is a monetary policy to help the people that are most marginalized, the people who've had least opportunity. I think a lot comes from, like, my oldest boy's autistic, Malachi, he's on moderate to severe on the spectrum. So, you know, in California, I go down there, I see a lot of people who are homeless, who are obviously clearly on the autism spectrum. And it's like, how do you actually help this person? You know, my wife said, how do we help them? Now, I can't help and solve all problems, but if I could create a system whereby this person's now getting distributions of an asset that comes into them, it no longer makes them worthless, you know? And by not making them worthless, it creates opportunity for them, and it creates opportunity to fix that. But if you think of people trying to do reparations to the African-American community and how these things, it's like, where did they decide in that? You know, Biden's been in office now for 2 weeks. He's done like 41 executive orders. That's what's weird, America. And see, in the UK, doesn't matter when they change government, you've still got to go through Parliament to make a decision. But in the US, it's like last month of presidency, you know, Trump's like, he's got a big stack of stuff. You know, Biden comes in, I've got my big stack. Like, wait a minute, this is just policy coming in without any sort of, you know, and then where's the money? You know, where's the money? Joe Biden, where's the money? You get $600 back then. Where's the cash? You know, where's a $2,000 check that you were going to promise people to help people? It's just like, it's just drying up, you know? It's like, oh, well, and everyone here, there's always these people say to me, but who's going to pay for this? You know, we still managed to tax us to pay $700 billion for the defense budget that increased during COVID. You know, we didn't say, oh, we'll delay the fact that we're going to build an extra 1,000 tanks at, you know, $500,000 a pop. You know, that contract goes through, you know, but the man in the street doesn't get it, you know. So this creates transparency to what is actually happening. And, you know, as I started to do it and do it more and more, I realized that this monetary policy, whether someone comes in and develops it, should be a future way for the world, because automation's coming and artificial intelligence is coming in. Yes. You know, 5G, people don't realize what 5G is going to do. It's going to create this ability for people to actually get into a car that's going to be self-driving, and the chances of it crashing is so much less than what it was pre-5G. So that means all these people who have jobs driving in America, which are millions, you know, eventually in the next 15 years, this job is going to leave. It's like going to the supermarket. It's like you go to the supermarket now, before COVID, now they're queuing you up. You scan your own stuff. You know, 15 years ago, I didn't scan it in case I got it wrong. Now you don't think about it. Jobs are going. So it's like, how are we going to help the people who need it most is we've got to provide this ability. And to me, it's like, why don't we, tokenize the government assets, which is supposed to belong to the people, give everyone the fair amount. But the reason why it's going to be beneficial to inner city areas is that because that's where it's densely populated, and that's where the people who don't have the assets, where the multimillionaire rich politicians who all live in like 300 acres worth of land in a big mansion and somehow make 28 million on a salary of 100,000, they live there. Oh, no, we don't want to do that because I'm making all this money anyway, where this is creating this equal ownership. They'll get the same Zion coins, Americoins as everyone else. And that's the model of what it is you're looking to develop out. And, I've spoken to different, and people like it because it's like, it seems to be a fair way to do it. The technology is in place to actually do this right now. Yes. So I've already spoken about, you could set up the wallets. I've spoken to companies that will actually do this. Coinbase could do it. Coinbase could run a wallet. We could all get a free Coinbase account. But like, who's going to fund the Americoins? The government would have to show the transactions. But if you think the valuation of the asset value in America right now, you're looking at over $200 trillion. Yeah, the Wikipedia says $271 trillion is the asset value in America. All I'm saying is we take this, we stick it in a token. Doesn't change how anything works. They still pick up the trash. It's not going to solve all the problems. You'll still hate that guy tomorrow anyway. The difference is we've created a system whereby these people now have an asset. And then you start to think about it. And my friend Giovanni from Italy that's doing a similar one, but his concept, he came up with this concept, sent it to me. He called it dragons. I don't know if the name's that best, Giovanni. He's Italian though, so we've got to go with his plan. But I told him he had to change it to Italia coin. But he wants to have it whereby he points out that if we've all got these wallets, therefore, and we're all getting Americoins, we now know this is this currency that people are getting. So if you're wealthy, you're doing well, and someone else is struggling, they've got an Americoin wallet. So you could transfer your distributions from Americoin straight to that guy to help him out more. And he believes that this will create a society change whereby the rich don't need it as much. So, but then if you saw someone, you're having a good day and you see someone struggling and that may have got their Americoin, you can actually transfer yours directly to them through this platform. And his model of doing it is taking it right into this conscious way of like, we can consciously actually help the guy in the street doing that. And I said, Giovanni, we'll get my stage done before we go to yours. But it's amazing to think that, this is what it is. And, he's on the blockchain committee with the Italian government speaking about this stuff, So it's like, it's different how it works. And each country would do the same thing. But then you open this can of worms, basically, whereby, well, what else does the blockchain do? It holds transparency. So it means we brings transparency to the government, and that's a good idea. It's like, look at the last two elections in America. 2016, Trump won according to the election, but then the Democrats said he lost because of the irregular voting tampering. This one, it's the same. So you think of America right now, the last two elections, you've got half the country saying the other guy lost and they didn't. Whereby we could just put this all on the blockchain. We can actually have a system. There's actually technology to do a voting system in the blockchain, whereby you can actually phone in and check your votes counted. And we could have just brought all this transparency to the whole thing. It's like your cash in your bank card. Right now, your cash is in your computer. You don't go down the bank every day and say, excuse me, teller, I want to check my $1,000 in my current account's just there. You just accept the money's there. You do this. So why would your vote through a computer not when it's actually through some technology whereby, and I saw this blockchain voting system whereby what it does is everyone would vote, but you can actually log in and see if your vote's counted. That's all it is. Yeah. Hey, wait a minute, that's a good idea. Why can't we just have that already exists? They don't want to do that. They want to just do we still got to do it by writing in mailboxes and then hide them away and count. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's the system's already in place, but they've done it because they don't want to create this ability for transparency. So to me, with the Libertarian Party is a big thing. What people want is transparency. It's like transparent. It's like smaller government, transparent government. It's not about ending everything. It's just like bringing transparency. It's a bit like, why are we building 25 new F-16s where the cost of an ejector seat costs more than the refurbishment of the school? So by the school has to wait 20 years for a refurbishment, but we're bashing out contracts for 100 F-16s here, 20 F-16s here. The Top Gun was in the 80s. When's the last time there's been a good sort of, Tom Cruise pilot fight out there. It's just like, why are we even building this stuff anymore?
That's a great
and
point.
during COVID, why are we building this stuff? Why are people not getting money? Why do we have to spend $700 billion in defense right now on, ballistic missiles? It doesn't make any sense.
Alastair, you brought up a great point earlier saying that, the everyday man has the ability now to own assets. Not only that, the everyday man can actually create assets too also. I think it's great with tokenization, what it's able to do now, so.
For me, it's like, so I end up going into these things, and because I'm a sort of news junkie, I end up watching the news all the time and that as well. So it's like, you just get upset when they're doing these things. But a lot of politicians are starting to think about that. Rashida, the one of the squad, I can't think of what her last name is. She was the last person in the world I had ever thought. I actually was talking about this, and she comes out in the news. I think we should make a sort of cryptocurrency that we get $2,000 a month for everyone that's getting it. Now, it wasn't my model and what she was doing, but she's already talking about this idea that we should actually create, and she was thinking it more in terms of UBI and helping people. The thing about people I don't get when you think about AOC and Bernie Sanders and all these guys, I don't agree with all their answers. I agree with bigger and bigger government, because it's just, I like smaller government, but they ask all the right questions. It's like, they don't come on TV and this person, because they're looking to look for help marginalized people and the people that are suffering, the people who don't have health care. They're actually asking all the right questions. It's just the answers they don't always have to agree with. And I think that's the key when you think about that as well. So, I'm basically trying to merge like, pure capitalism with pure socialism, like that. Actually, that's what it is. The people think, this guy's trying to do that. It's like you're trying to get them both together. That's actually this is what it is, And if people took political affiliation aside and think about it, they think, well, it's actually not a bad idea, and there's a way to do it. And it's like, where's the monetary policy to help us? Now, whether this monetary policy will work, at least there's a monetary policy with an idea to help bail out. If you think you've got a small business that you've just had it ravaged because of COVID, and then some of the decisions the government's making based on policy rather than, they're making COVID decisions on their political career, not on healthcare issues and stuff like that. It's happening all over the world, But then someone's got a small business that they could have just applied, why can't they open the same way Walmart opens? It doesn't make sense to me. So they're now ravaged with debt. They've got no chance. They could have spent 20 years building this business. Suddenly, okay, let's tokenize the asset. It creates a reset button, and it gives them an opportunity to start again. And then suddenly and people would get Americoins in. I want to basically invest Americoins in this guy's business because I like it. Then he takes that, and you create this whole revolution to what's actually starting to happen. And it'll start to go more and more and more and more and more like that as well. And to me, that's the policy I'm working on. So when people say Libertarian Party, is that the Tiger King who ran third in Oklahoma? It's the governor. It's not that, this is what I'm trying to do. It's just that, you're a peripheral party. You don't get the airtime. People don't want to hear that. It's a two-party system, but it's really, because the Libertarian Party have only ever got one policy out there that's actually recognizable, and that's the legalization of cannabis. It's like, and that was started in the Libertarian Party in the 70s. So it's not like the Libertarian Party are going to take over. They're a party of policy. And if they get 1, 2, 3, 4 policies out there. So I like to think that the first policy they got was legalization of cannabis, which is obviously good in so many different ways. You can
we already got, this is Jeff. We got that one done here in California.
Yeah, exactly, Jeff. So we can just basically bash on with Americoin as the second policy,
absolutely.
So that's
I'm taking notes here. Smart contracts, 5 years, 10 years for blockchain. How many years for voting on the blockchain? And then my second question, where's the next Wyoming? What states are following that lead of the things we're seeing in Wyoming?
Delaware is now looking at these things, but we're buying interests into, we've got a company that these guys run an investment bank out of Texas. So I've met these guys, they fund projects. So they're speaking at me. They want to do their own token and fund a project out of Texas, so, and these guys are already funding oil projects anyway. They just want to try it with this new mechanism. So they're pretty close to actually pulling it all together with it as well. And I just think they'll just start to come more and more places. People will start coming in, it'll start to develop from there, and it'll start to build out like that. And, I just think it's at this tipping point, we're just pushing, but once it starts to happen, and then I don't want to have this 100% market domination. I just want to basically push through so it starts to happen, because the more people that do it creates the more credibility in what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just in what it is. So in a way, it's like the start of the internet. It's just like, originally it was about email, and you think the blockchain was originally Bitcoin. Now, 30 years later, how many things do we use the internet for? For people at home who don't think about it, that's what's happening right now. I'm talking about one use case, this tokenization of assets. It's just like, once it starts, in 10 years from now, if we all came back to this podcast, there'd be so many different things to talk about with blockchain and the technology that has started to happen. So it's what you're doing there at the BBC is just basically this ability to bring as many people into the blockchain is such a good idea right now, because the opportunities will just start to open up more and more and more for you, as companies now will want to buy into this, and they need people trained into it who know their industry sector so they can understand the application. Because once you understand it, you can understand how to apply it, I just understand it from this tokenization of energy. So I just see it in that sort of binary way.
Well, guys, I want to wrap things up a bit, but remind you that this is exactly what we're doing all month long. We have coming up, Rich, at the end of the month, we have who's coming. You guys are launching your project.
Yes.
I don't think I have the name, so I wanted to put that on here.
Horace Jones,
okay,
the Game Changer. Actually launching, doing a soft launch for a book, a cookbook.
Okay.
Yep. Right. And also Darren D. Watson. He's a painter. They're actually launching a gallery collection of paintings.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that soft launch is going to be
both NFTs. Yeah.
Okay.
I may have a surprise too. Also, I'm working on something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have
tokenization of art's becoming big as well. That'll be the next thing. Tokenization in art, because a lot of people want to own a piece of art that increases in value. This will be the next thing. People don't realize that. They'll take some expensive painting, tokenizing it. You'll own this piece. It won't be in your wall. You'll have a replica. But as the value of this painting goes up, you've got an asset through fractionalized ownership through that.
Absolutely.
So I've been emailed a few things from people wanting to do this already, so that's another area I'll see massive growth with tokenization that people don't think about,
Yeah, we'll
have to tokenize the Mona Lisa then.
Yeah, that's exactly. If the museum runs out of money, that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then I kind of wanted to also run down who else we have coming up here too on the 10th next week. Doug Pepe, Eric, what about their Raven coins, right? And
yes, Douglas Pepe will be on Douglas Pepe's platform is Mango Farms Assets. Douglas actually is a Georgetown law professor who, made his migration into blockchain, into tokenized assets. He also has a new platform that focuses on NFTs. And it's always great, but, anytime you talk to a law professor, who found his way into this, it's also great when you talk to him about some of the regulation, some of the things he's seeing. And so Douglas is going to be great. So look forward to that next week.
And then after that, we got David Watson of Simba Chain, who's going to be coming and giving a personal live perspective, on his experience actually being paid in tokens and one project he was involved in, and then certainly his migration into Simba Chain work. So I want to thank ALASTAIR, though, for starting us off strong with our tokenization month. We appreciate you so much. And if you still are real serious about having those emails sent to us, and we send you
perfect. We'll send out the paper so everyone can get it and they don't have to buy it. So it's like I can just copy.
By the way, ALASTAIR, Dr. K said you should run for president. But if you have that in the work,
that's it as well. I give everything away. I don't want to be. It's just like we'll just put it all on the blockchain. That's the plan.
It'll be great. But again, thank you so much. We appreciate everybody's time tonight. I think we got all the questions, didn't we, Percy? Looks like everybody's good. Yeah, don't forget to join our Discord channel, guys, as BBC makes our transition from our current platform to Discord. So Thanks so much for everybody's time tonight, and keep in touch. Keep in touch.
Yeah. Thanks, then, guys.
Bye
Appreciate
bye.
your time.
See you next week.
That's
Bye bye.
Appreciate it.